How to start out in cybersecurity 2026. If you're starting out in cybersecurity right now, you're probably worried about how artificial intelligence is going to change your career path. There's 4 things you need to have a great career in cybersecurity. You need to understand the basics of cybersecurity. You need to understand the basics of vendor platforms. You need to get some experience, and then you need to be able to wrap all of that together with artificial intelligence. Now, last week we released a video on how I said artificial intelligence is going to dramatically change our career field. I said that if you're a chief information security officer, you're not in charge of AI, you might get replaced. I said if you're a cyber startup founder and your feature set is not amazingly different than what's out there, it's probably not going to be good enough. And I said if you're a cyber practitioner, you've got to learn AI. We are going to go into that a lot deeper in this video. Now, why should you listen to me? My name's Ron Gula. I've been involved with some of the most iconic companies out there like Tenable Network Security, government organizations like the National Security Agency, and I run Gula Tech Adventures, where I've had the opportunity to invest $200 million in cyber AI national security startups and also nonprofits which specialized in diversifying the cyber workforce, encouraging people to get involved with that. The first thing I'm going to tell you is that if you're learning cybersecurity today, it's a little bit disingenuous. If you're learning to be a doctor, you actually go to a hospital when you're done. You do your orderly work, your intern work, and you actually get to see real life patients. If you're learning to fly an airplane, you eventually go to an airport and you actually do flying, taking off from that airport. We don't teach cyber like that. We basically teach people the basics and then we turn them out. And it's a little bit disingenuous because when you go to a 4-year school or a 2-year school, what do you learn? You learn the basics of cryptography, the basics of cybersecurity, the basics of networking. You don't really learn how it works in the real world. And in many times, sometimes that tech is a little bit dated because the IT tech has just gone so fast. And it's a little bit harder for people to learn about. So one of the questions we get is, should you get a 4-year degree? Should you get a 2-year degree? Should you get certifications? If you're just starting out today, look, whatever you can get involved in based on where you are in life, what your ability to afford, what kind of scholarships you get, you're going to get a little bit better background at a 4-year school than you are going to get perhaps at a 2-year school, because a 4-year school is going to give you a little bit more opportunity to learn things outside of cyber, which I believe is super, super important. Cyber people tend to be very isolated with technology and whatnot. So I would say, look, if you're on a 4-year career path or a school path, a 2-year path, or even a certification path, you're going to learn the same things, just at different levels. I don't really see a lot of differentiation for that, which is a little controversial. I tend to believe that the basics of cybersecurity are more on the trade side of things than the college education side, which also is a little bit controversial. But I'm actually wearing one of our portfolio companies today, Cybrary. Now, I'm on the board of that. We've been investing in that. Cybrary's helped a great number of organizations do that. And we'll take a quick look at Cybrary here. So I'm on their skill paths page. So I have an account where I get to view this as if I'm an employer, and I can put a wide variety of our employees through here and learning the basics of this. Now, if you're looking through all their different courses, they got all the fundamentals, all the basics. And you can look at even these career paths and look at what they're doing and start coming down to skills paths and career paths. I was on the skills paths page. And you can see, you kind of get a sense of what types of jobs that are out there. Now, I don't see these jobs changing a whole lot in the next year or two, even though we're going to have AI coming in. But what's a little disingenuous here is that if you got those certifications and you went to work for a bank, a university, an airline, a software company, you're going to be doing all of those fundamental things, but you're going to be doing it with vendors that aren't mentioned in these things. And it's really not a fault of the people teaching at the 4-year schools, the 2-year schools, or even places like Cybrary, because vendors kind of come and go, and vendors change what they do. So look, you have to understand the basics of cybersecurity, how networks work, how things work, what are the risks, what are those compliances out there. And as you go through that, you can get a little bit more in depth, like I said, with a 4-year school or a 2-year school. But there's a point where that education is generic and it won't benefit you anymore. You have to then cross over into what I consider the platform area. Now, in the last video, I basically said, look, it used to be that you would run, if you were in charge of cybersecurity for a company, you might pick the best cyber product for every vertical. And when I say the verticals, I'm talking about like an endpoint tool, a logging tool, a malware security tool, an authentication tool. But today in 2026, what's going on is there's the platformatization of our industry, which means I can probably buy 80 to 90% of the cyber widgets I need from one vendor. And that vendor might be a Palo Alto, might be a Cisco, might be a Checkpoint, might be a Fortinet, might be a Microsoft, might even be an Amazon. And because of that, if you want to then work in that career field, you have to, or at that employer, you need to take all the fundamentals of what you learned and then apply it to that vendor. And this is where it becomes a little bit interesting, because if you are a student, or like I study this industry quite a bit, you might know that the company that Fortinet bought to solve perhaps secure web browsing was the top of its class. Maybe the one they bought for DNS security was the second or third best one. The reality is, at a platform level, I used to feel like I wanted the best absolute cyber tech wherever I was. The reality is if you got a platform, and even if you have the best cyber tech that's out there, and somebody sophisticated like China, a very advanced ransomware group, somebody like Iran, if they come at you, that's not going to matter so much. What matters more is that you have all your bases covered, right? The NIST cybersecurity framework, PCI, it doesn't say you have to buy the upper right corner of the Gartner Magic Quadrant, or the vendor that throws the best parties at RSA. The point is that you need to have all of your stuff covered. If you don't have a secure perimeter, you're going to be a lot easier to breach. If you don't do patching, you're going to be a lot harder to breach. So if you do patching, it'll be harder to breach. But the point is you have to have coverage. So what does this mean for people getting into cyber in 2026? It means that the training you're getting at school, or certification-wise, or 4-year school, you have to supplement that. First of all, if your school happens to have a training module from Tenable Network Security or Checkpoint or one of these vendors, take it, because that will differentiate you from most everybody else entering the workforce who has got more of this generic background cyber training. The second thing is that most of these companies offer free training. I did a lot of Googling before. I found free training for Checkpoint, for Tenable, for CrowdStrike, for Palo Alto. Now, it might not be the full course, but it can get you started. And if you can pass a certification, you can put it on your resume, do a lab. It's not the full-on experience that you really want. We're going to talk about that next. But it's what you need to do to apply the fundamentals that you learned in your certification class, your 2-year class, or your 4-year class. So now that we've covered the basics and understanding platform, how do you get experience? This is where I see a lot of students tripped up in applying over and over again. And look, I know it's a struggle. I have a deck. I have a folder full of probably a good dozen resumes of friends of mine's kids who looking for jobs, that sort of thing. So look, first thing is experience really differentiate you. So where can you get experience? One, if your school offers an experience program, working in their SOC, working in their MSSP, working in some sort of engagement, you need to take that. My wife Cindy and I, we sort of stopped doing direct competitive grants at the Gula Tech Foundation, and we started the Cyber Ready Clinic. The Cyber Ready Clinic is a nonprofit that right now we're very focused in Central Maryland, where basically what we've done is we've partnered with a local community college. We take people who are going through the college, and we take these practitioners, and we actually go out and do assessments in the nonprofits here in Maryland. So we actually do live assessments with these practitioners, and we give them real world experience. There are a variety of different clinics all across the country. This clinic concept has really picked up over the last couple of years. There's a lot of different approaches out there. If your school has the ability to do something where you get to be involved with a vendor or a nonprofit where you get some actual cyber work experience, if you don't take advantage of that, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. Most of the folks I see having a harder time getting jobs are the ones who don't have this experience. It's very competitive, but you need to get that kind of experience. The second thing is if you don't have access to that, where can you go and volunteer? It's a very interesting time right now, but it looks like in the local area, we're very, very concerned that, there's places like your churches, your schools. If you have the ability to volunteer and spend some time working in IT in these nonprofits in these local areas on your own, that counts as well. And even if you're working at like a part-time job and you happen to manage, like, the micros cashier terminal, at where you're working at, that's still experience, right? Did you put two-factor authentication on that? Did you patch it? Did you do those things? You need to think about it from that point of view. So even if you're getting a part-time job in a non-cyber role, what can you still do to help that organization where you're at, be better off? But what I see a lot of people miss when they're doing that job search is they might live in a certain location and they might apply to all the obvious cyber companies out there. Hey Ron, can you help me get a job at Tenable? I get that. I get that a lot. But there's only so many large platforms out there. What I think a lot of people new to the cyber workforce don't understand is that there's about 30,000 managed service providers. These are outsourced IT organizations who manage commercial and nonprofit organizations' IT. All of them have some sort of cybersecurity offering, even though what they're doing is doing mostly IT. If you can go work at one of these places, even if it's part-time, and get some experience working with some of these vendors I mentioned, other ones, Kaseya, for example, if you can get more experience with that, or even Huntress in our portfolio, where they focus on helping MSPs act like MSSPs and do cybersecurity for a variety of different things, it's a good type of experience. Now, I've seen a lot of people with a 4-year degree say, gee, I don't want to lower myself and work as a part-time at one of these places. The reality is if you're getting experience, it's going to help you. I've seen some people sort of wait and sit for that golden opportunity where they're getting paid, a six-figure salary and that kind of thing. The reality is getting that experience, even if it's a part-time thing, getting that experience is such a good opportunity, especially if you're not working at the moment. And if you're considering work, why not go work for an MSP and learn how they do that offering? I think one of the biggest things security experts in our industry recognize is that the MSPs out there, they need help. They need better technology. They need better trained people. And a lot of times, at that sort of smaller business level of the market, you don't have as many people paying attention to the basics of cybersecurity. You'd be very surprised how many MSPs that I've run into and that a lot of cyber people have run into who don't have basic hygiene on the inside of it because that's not their primary opportunity. You can help them, even if it's part-time, you're going to get that experience and hopefully that will lead to a better paying job. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the AI. We've already said you need to understand the basics of cyber, you need to understand vendor platforms, and then you need to get some sort of experience. Now, how do you roll artificial intelligence into that? Well, if we go back to Cybrary, you can see that they've got some career paths. It doesn't say anything about AI, but if you look at their stay ahead there, they have an AI readiness track where they talk about the foundations of AI for cybersecurity and the AI for cybersecurity roles and whatnot. And look, that's great. AI is moving so fast. Not only do you have to pay attention to how people are applying AI to cybersecurity, but you need to have some of your own interests. Personally, I'm an animator. I would not be a good animator without artificial intelligence. And then from that, I kind of got into the new sort of Sora animation. I've made some funny ads for our companies and whatnot in our portfolio. But understanding animation, understanding the AI animation, being able to clone my own voice and create an AI bot called Vron, that has made me a better investor, a better technologist, and a better understanding of how fast this market is moving. Now, do you need to go out and do all that? You could if you want to. Those tools are there. But there's so much going on in AI right now with programming, with orchestration, with just even trying to understand how can you learn new cybersecurity things through AI. If you have these large technical documents, can you have the AI summarize it for you? Can you write workflows to alert you of new types of opportunities and new types of technologies that are out there? The point is, if you don't become literate with these AIs, you're going to be very, very much left behind. So not only is AI something in that you're going to be using every day, you're also going to be using it for research and understanding, producing content, and reading content. And I have a couple of recommendations for people who are doing that. So one, you need to apply AI to something you like from outside your direct interest, right? You can't just be AI on cyber all the time because you're going to become very, very focused on whatever you're doing with that. So if you're a musician, can you use AI to reverse engineer a song into a MIDI file? Can you reverse engineer the song to the lyrics? Can you generate songs? Can you do that? So if you're a musician, it's a great way to understand what the limits and progresses we have in artificial intelligence. Now, the second thing is you should be using multiple AI technologies. Now, right now, January 2026, the two big things that people are using are Claude and ChatGPT. And I don't see that changing in the short term, but you need to understand that if you ask those two things the same question, you might get slightly different answers. A lot of people are starting to use Gemini more now, which is Google's AI. The point is you should bring these types of technologies into your workflow and look at how you can do on-prem private AI models. If you're not familiar with Hugging Face, if you're not familiar with things like NVIDIA RTS or things like Comfy UI, where you can create your own AI art and videos and sounds and voices right on your desktop. Doing a lot of that, different types of modules of how you learn that with AI is a great way to understand what those limits are and what the problems are with that. Being able to touch these different types of technologies directly and getting different results, including results that are errors, it really gives you a sense of how reliable and useful this stuff is when it goes in there. But then the third thing we're going to talk about is that if you're going to be in cybersecurity and you're using AI, you need to understand where the risks of AI is. If somebody makes a model, what are those risks? Now, we did a video where I interviewed Vron about the Berryville Institute for Machine Learning, and they talked about their 87 different risks of using large language models. That's the kind of technology or content that you should be understanding and be very, very comfortable with discussing to people who have been in cyber longer than you, and also to people who have no idea how this stuff works. You need to be able to discuss those. If you can't discuss the risks of AI from an IT and cyber point of view, that's probably going to be one of the biggest things that's going to hold you back. All right. So having said all that, I really don't see a big difference between 4-year degrees, 2-year degrees, and the certifications. You're going to learn more when you go to a 4-year degree. You're going to get exposed to more things. But if you look at the basics of cybersecurity, and I sit down with somebody who's got a 4-year degree, a 2-year degree, or a certification degree, chances are they're going to answer the questions about what's a firewall, what's authentication, what's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It's going to be roughly the same. The 4-year degree is probably going to have more opportunities to go more in depth. And that's the biggest difference between those things. But understanding all of that is step one. Step two, get some experience with vendor platforms. And if you go to a firewall company and they have other things besides firewalls, make sure you get training and certification in those things. Platformatization is the future of cybersecurity. get some experience. I talked about your local school. I talked about volunteering. I talked about even taking a part-time job doing something that's out there. And then lastly, I talked about rolling everything together with AI, using it for research, using it to understand, and then using it for things outside of your immediate cybersecurity interests. Now, when you go to apply for a job, where are you going to apply? I believe the future is going to be cyber people working at large enterprises, people who have, that's one of the futures, large enterprises, people who have a lot of different information security issues, a lot of different access control lists, a lot of databases, a lot of policy. As you get into smaller business, though, it's going to be less and less of an opportunity to work there. Instead, you're probably going to go work at an MDR, a managed detection and response company, an MSSP, a managed system security provider, or even a managed services provider. You're probably going to go work at one of those companies so you can take your skills and apply them at scale across the industry. Those companies are probably right in your neighborhood right now, but they're not named brands like Palo Alto or CrowdStrike or Tenable Network Security. It could be Jerry's IT Consulting. And I hate to think about it like that, but there's 30,000 of these managed secure service providers all across the country. If you can go to those companies and you can help them be better cyber, you can help them be better at cyber. You can help their customers be better at cyber, and that might be a career path that you're not looking at. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please check out our other videos here at the channel. We've put some really good effort into different types of videos. We've got our interview with the AI series. We've got a whole tech founder video series where I talk about all the different things for startups. We've got videos for me talking here. We've also got my Virtual Ron series where he's talked about a lot of different cyber things, got a wide variety of interviews. And then I got more videos from our portfolio companies, including some funny ads. And then we got a lot of humor here. We created a AI series of animated videos. We kind of spoofed the Jerry Seinfeld thing with our Seinfeld sitcom, and I got him doing a wide variety of stand-up. All right. Once again, I'm Ron Gula. I wish everybody luck. Feel free to leave a comment out there, put notes on this on LinkedIn, however you're watching it. I want to help people get involved with cyber and have good quality careers. It was a great career for a lot of folks I've gotten to work with along the way, and I think it's going to be an even better career for people going forward. I'm Ron Gula. Remember, you can't have good AI without good cyber. I wish everybody luck getting into this industry, and I'm looking forward to your feedback. Have a great day.